she uses to comfort her couture sewing school students, both past and present. Susan Khalje is one of the foremost educators and practitioners of couture sewing in the world. She began her career with professional training at the New York couture sewing salon, Chez Abbé, and later as a designer on 7th Avenue, New York. She then established her own wedding dress and evening wear company, Susan Khalje Couture, before focusing full-time on preserving the techniques of couture sewing through her couture sewing school established in the 90s. You're listening to Sew Organised Style podcast, produced by me, Maria Theoharis, Susan Goodwin of Measure Twice, Cut Once Patterns, and Anne Wally, the Pattern Whisperer. Susan Khalje is an exceptional and sought-after teacher running couture sewing technique workshops throughout the United States as well as internationally. Here in Australia, we've had the benefit of Susan teaching her couture sewing technique workshops during her Australian teaching tours. She's packing her bags right now, so those of us who are going to her workshops in Melbourne, Sydney and Adelaide from January can spend time in her amazing sewing presence. Susan's kindness helps sewers like me to feel less fragile when they attend her workshops. Susan knows that most sewers are self-taught, and we don't have diplomas to recognise what we know, and Susan does this in her workshops. She confirms to her students that we all have good sewing skills, and Susan takes her couture sewing teaching very seriously. At the start of every workshop, she sees where you are and takes you to the next step, making you a better sewer. Let's listen to Susan now.
Hi, Maria.
Hi, Anne.
So where is everybody? You're in Melbourne?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm in Sydney.
And she's in Sydney and I'm in Baltimore. Okay. I love it.
Yes.
Amazing.
Susan, you've got such a reputation that whenever I talk to anyone, they know who you are.
Mm.
And I do sewing mentoring, and part of the discussion we talk about is things that people could do, things that people are doing with their sewing life. And I am always in awe of how some of the mentorees have put their hand up to do your course, and it's a nerve-wracking experience, like seriously nerve-wracking. But without a doubt, at the end of it, it's like they've come out like, you know, the cocoon and the caterpillar.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fabulous experience. And one thing that really strikes me is they say how kind you are, how much you know, and how you work through the process, and nothing is a problem. But it is an intensive course. So that blew me away to actually hear that even though it was an intensive course and it was a very involved course,
Mm-hmm.
you're not left behind. And
Absolutely not. No. Well, in the first place, obviously, I take it very seriously. And I take people's time and effort and spirit and intention and money very seriously. And I wouldn't do what I do if I didn't feel, not just, I was going to say if I didn't feel I could deliver, but if I didn't feel I could make people better sewers, I wouldn't do it. Why would I do it? Right? I mean, that would be just kind of silly. It'd be kind of a travesty, not to mention professional suicide. But I always feel that I can take you where you are and I'll make you better.
wow.
That I can do. That I know I can do. And I think, you kind of look back and you think, okay, why do I do what I do? And I do think I have a talent for connecting with people, and in an unintimidating way, once I get them there. And I can kind of see where they are, and I can bring them along in a gentle, productive way. And part of that is, I think, so I'm a teacher, I'm an educator, and I mean, that's, at the end of the day, that's what I am. And I think when you when you put yourself out there and say you want to learn something, I think that puts you in a vulnerable place. I mean, who likes to say they don't know something? Nobody likes that, right?
Exactly.
I mean, I don't care if it's, where the bathroom is or how to get to the next town. It's very intimidating to be in a position where you're admitting publicly that you don't know something. So I always have that in the back of my mind. So I think that's why I'm gentle with people,
Wow.
And no, it's true. And I think it's a more productive way to deal with people. I'm not trying to show off what I know. That's so far from the truth. Who cares? But that's not the point of my teaching. My point is to see where you are and take you to the next step. And I somehow think I'm good at that. So yeah, that's kind of the basic philosophy of it. So, and I know people get intimidated. Again, it's that fragility of admitting you don't know something. And let's face it. So let me talk a little bit about how I feel about people and their sewing. So most sewers are self-taught, right? I mean, they just are. Certainly in this country, you can't learn to sew in high school anymore the way we used to be able to do back in the day. So you're pretty much self-taught. And I think it's one thing if you go to university and you end up with your diploma and they've awarded you this, they've recognized that you know the subject well, and that gives you a certain confidence. But sewers don't have that, because they're self-taught. So their knowledge is on very shaky ground. So you have to know that, and you have to be gentle with them and emphasize, confirm what they know, and kind of reward them for that. Because I'm telling you, I always start classes, we kind of go around the circle, who you are, where you, and it's invariably, I learned to sew from my grandmother, or I learned from the Vogue sewing book, or I've taught myself. So we're talking about people with kind of a fragile sense of what they know. I mean, they all think the sewing police are going to come in and arrest them. No, they do. And, I make it clear too that, I mean, there are parts of sewing I know a lot about. There are parts of sewing I know nothing about. So we all have our strengths. So that's kind of part of, I think, the foundation of how I approach my teaching and how I feel about my students.
So I was just thinking, I did look to see that you were in a sewing school in 7th Avenue, and I won't even try and say the name of the school. What was the name of the school?
Well, it wasn't a school. I worked for a couture house. Oh. I worked for a small couture house in New York, and it was called Chez Bez. And I was so fortunate to, honestly, I had a whole other career before I did this. I was a classical pianist. And I never in a million years thought that this would be a career. And I had a girlfriend whose grandmother was a client, and I sewed for my friends. It was kind of, I was good at it. I think I was about as good as you could get with a Vogue sewing book, and, like we all do, oh, I haven't done this kind of a collar. Let me get this pattern. Let me try this. And I wouldn't say I went there on a whim, but it was kind of that. And it absolutely resonated with me. So I was extraordinarily lucky to be able to be put in that situation. By the same token, I think they were very lucky that they had me walk in the door, because here was someone who I got it. I was this creative, talented little sponge that walked in. So it was really fantastic on both sides. And then after that, I was involved in a business on 7th Avenue, but that was a very different situation. That was ladies' sportswear. So
how did they teach you? How did they teach you?
Just by doing. I remember the first day I was given, our clientele was in New York City, Upper East Side, which is kind of a swanky part of town. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And our clients tended to be wealthy, Upper East Side women. So it was these were the ladies who lunch, and ladies with a lovely social life. I mean, it was a pretty upper class bunch. And I remember the first day I was given, I think it must have been an outfit, a silk outfit that you might have worn if you were having a lunch. And I was told to baste it together. And I just sort of did what I was told. And it made perfect sense because, the one thing that overarches all of this couture sewing is logic. There's no smoke and mirrors. This is not some crazy, mysterious, woo-woo kind of discipline. It's dead logic. And I think it just somehow appealed to me. It resonated with me. And everything that was given to me, I said, oh, okay, yep, all right, well, I'll do this. I get this. And I was able to do it. And it just somehow was the perfect fit. So I just fell in love with it seriously from day one. And I think I was about as good as you could get being a self-taught sewer, right? Like I said, going through the Vogue sewing book and, getting more and more complicated Vogue patterns. I think I got about as far as you could get doing that on my own steam. And then this was suddenly underlinings and these fantastic hand stitches and these gorgeous fabrics. I mean, it was a wonderful, wonderful new world that I just happened to fit into. So I was extraordinarily fortunate with that, I have to say. Yeah.
So it's the love of it that gets
totally.
you going.
Absolutely. It is the love of it. It's kind of the way to sew. You get the most fantastic results. You really do.
You do.
You do. I mean, it works. It just works. Those French. It's respecting, it's respecting design and fabric and engineering and construction and fit and proportion. It's respecting all of those elements. And those are the elements that when it works, they all fit together and it meshes and it's like a fabulous recipe. It just all comes together. So
that's one thing I find, that there's a lot of people who teach and we've all been taught by people who don't love what they do.
Right.
And that is a very dry desert. But when you have someone...
It'd be horrible.
Oh, but a person with passion, a person who sees the logic, who understands the language, and also has the gift of passing on and getting people over that burden where they can see it, is a unique experience that is life-changing for someone who's always wanted to do that type of sewing but couldn't spend 4 years at a university or a house themselves. So in a way, you think about, it's a huge thing to do, but I always believe that when we do things that we haven't done before, it keeps us young in our minds.
It does, and it keeps you, it keeps you in the game. It keeps you engaged. It keeps you thinking. You've got to be on your toes. And I think you've got to stay involved. And it's really, and what's wonderful about couture sewing, and I think the reason I am constantly and continually enthralled by it is that there are a billion applications of it. You never run out of directions in which it can go. It's endless. It's absolutely endless. So that's the really fun part of it. It's not like, oh God, here we go again. No, not at all. Because you've got the design, the body, what the person wants, the fabric, their skills, what they want to concentrate on. So you've got this huge range of elements that go into all of that. And that's really, I think, the fun. And, it's always a challenge to me. So I have a student walk in, they want to make this dress. So what's the best way to do it? What's the best way that they can grab the knowledge that's contained in that, right? What's the best way I can communicate that to them? You don't want to overwhelm people, but you don't want to insult people. So, and that, actually that gets into the funnest part, I think, of teaching, because it's, what do you have to do to get through to that particular student? Because, everybody learns in a different way, right? I mean, some people you give them a little bit of knowledge. They want to kind of sit in the corner and do their own thing, and you kind of check on them occasionally, but they're happy as a clam sitting there. Other people, you need to, constant reassurance, or you need to kind of watch them every step of the way, or else they'll go off on some tangent. And that, to me, is so much fun. How do I get to this person? What's the best way I can challenge them without making it too difficult. What's the best way to unlock their talents applied to this particular project? And that, honestly, that's one of the funnest things about it. Because it does run the whole gamut. I'm thinking of a student I just had who's very talented, but she just doesn't have confidence in herself.
Okay.
And she's getting better and better and better, but there's still kind of this core of not belief in herself. So one of my jobs with her is to reassure her, to not make her think that she's leading the way, but to applaud her independent decision making. Right. Wow. Because she's at a point now where she's really beginning to figure things out on her own. And so with her, that's what I have to emphasize.
Wonderful.
I've got to kind of shore her up in that way. So, and I've got another student. Oh gosh, she's amazing. And she's really smart, loves a challenge. And for her, I can just toss it out there and boy, she'll figure it out.
Wow.
So it's always different. And that's a big part of it too. How can I get to that particular student? What's the best way to reach them? Because it's always different. So it's totally different.
Now, Maria was one of your students. Maria, how did you feel before you went? And how did you feel in the class? And how did you feel after?
Prepping for the class takes time, and you can't rush it. But being in the class is really, I found not just what I was doing was what I was learning from, but I know Susan gets us together, she says, introduce what we're doing. And then as we're going around, you see everyone's ideas and what they wanted to do. So then we just all start comparing colours and all that sort of thing. But through the class itself, Susan will say, okay, come over here. So we all go around and she'll show us something. So you don't just learn from what you're doing, you learn from what everyone else is doing. Whether Susan calls you over or not, there's nothing to stop you from sort of peering or just sitting and listening quietly. It takes a lot to prep to go there. And once you're there, you keep changing your decisions because Susan's saying, now what about this? And she's leading you down a certain path or various paths, and you do have to make your own decision as to which way you're going to go. Well, that's how it felt to me.
Well, but that's one reason the class is set up the way it is, because, yes, it's all, for example, the couture sewing school class. Okay, it's all couture, and there's kind of a foundation of these basic couture techniques. But like I said, the applications are endless. And I think it's great fun to see what Betty's doing and what Marianne is doing.
Yeah, it is.
Because obviously, one garment, you can't apply everything, but you get to eavesdrop on what other people are doing. And I think that's a big part of the education.
A lot of people, when I've said, I did the couture lace skirt class, and they're going, I wouldn't wear. And I just thought, hang on a second. Since that class, I think I've got the dress behind me that Khalje helped me buy the fabrics when we were in Brisbane.
Yes.
But since then, so I've made one skirt, but I think I've made 3 dresses in it with couture lace based on that one class that I did with you, Susan.
Absolutely. And, that's the point. Yeah, of course, in the class you work on X project or X dress. But that's only the beginning of it. It's like when you take a trip, you're thinking about it ahead of time. Then there's the trip, and then you're thinking about it afterwards. And it's the same with the class. Okay, you learn a certain amount there, but it's it's not just that. It's all the applications you put this information to. And I think that's when it really gets exciting. Yeah, the class is great, but that's kind of done at a certain point. But then you can apply it to so many other things. I kind of like to think I kind of open up people's eyes, to the possibilities.
Maria, there was one thing that you said when we were talking to someone else about the classes. What was it? I'd do it all again in a heartbeat.
Oh, yeah. I've been 3 times, for goodness sakes.
Right.
Once in Sydney when I was in that RSL, and then I flew up to Brisbane to do the lace couture because I didn't know if you were ever going to come back, and I thought, oh my God, I've got to take as much advantage of this because this was like a one-off opportunity. Now it's the third year that you're coming back.
It is.
With
Yeah.
so
And
many more classes.
There was a lot going on here last year. It couldn't get away. But I'm so excited about coming back because, people always say to me, oh, gosh, what are they like over there? What are these Australians like? And, right? And I say, well, I like to use their word. They're very keen. They're very keen sewers. They're very excited. They're very interested. They're eager to learn. And, it's just so much fun. But educational.
Oh, very educational. And the second year that you came and I did that jacket which had like the faux vest.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Beautiful.
And then, that's straight after that class I ended up having foot surgery. So while I was sitting at home recovering, I was doing all the hand sewing. So it worked out perfectly, right? But then last year this year, you'd gone to the UK, so you did your London trip.
I did.
And you went to McQueen, the exhibit.
Oh, my God, unbelievable.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Unbelievable. Incredible.
So I had to go to the UK for a different reason, not long after that. So I went up to there. And she showed me the coat with the faux jacket, the faux vest on the inside. I thought, da-da-da. And I got totally mixed up. And I thought, I did that with Susan.
There you go, right?
I know. It was fabulous.
No, is that wonderful? But, so that's the applications you see. That's the breadth. That's what happens when you learn these things, that they go out in so many different directions,
One thing that I think when you've gone on a journey or a pilgrimage or you've met like-minded people and you've jumped over that fence and you've done something together, what do you do with all these people? And you've come up with a brilliant idea, keep them together. So what do? A private Facebook group. So tell me about that.
I have to say it was actually, this idea was hatched when I was in Melbourne. And one of the gals in the class, and she lives in, where does she live? In Tasmania. And she said, this is all well and good. This is great, but you're not going to be able to do this forever. Now, nobody likes to hear that or think about that.
We're but like that here.
Right. I mean, a very healthy state of denial. But she said, at some point, you're not going to be able to do it. So, and this is such a wonderful network. What if you could create some kind of a network that kind of mimicked the atmosphere that we have in class? And I started thinking about it, and because she belonged to some kind of, it was a Facebook group she belonged to, and she said, it's fabulous, and I'm just saying, got to think about this. So we did, and I thought, wow, wouldn't that be great? Because, Marie, you know what it's like in class. You do kind of create this little microcosm. We're all kindred spirits. Yeah. We care about these out in left field, arcane things that most people really don't care about, let's face it. So I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could do this? So Facebook is the platform, and I know there are people not crazy about Facebook, but honestly, it does work. So for whatever reasons, it's on Facebook.
You need the visual and the audio. You need both.
Well, you need them to do it, and it's just not possible to create your own platform. So it's fantastic. It's so much fun. I am on it a lot. Well, I mean, it's my thing, and obviously I have to be on it, and I love participating in it. But everybody, sewers, I don't know why, but sewers just represent the kindest, loveliest demographic. But anyway, so we create this lovely atmosphere in a class, and I think we've done that on the Facebook group. And I guess I thought it would be kind of limited to, here's how to sew your skirt. But not at all. I mean, we find about books and videos and exhibitions and articles, and somebody will say, I'm going to Hamburg next week. Does anybody know of any good fabric stores? Or how about the fit of this skirt? And everybody chips in. And it's just such a supportive, welcoming, and helpful atmosphere. And of course, a big part of it, we have sewing videos. And a lot of them are really exclusive to that. We finished filming the circle skirt dress. We've got the patterns now. That's next up. And we're just finishing the pattern on the funnel neck coat. And actually, we're doing a collaboration with Linton Tweeds, which is very exciting. So club members are going to get a discount, and they're actually sending me fabric samples. So there's that. So education, of course, you know me, I'm the teacher. Education, of course, is a big part of it, but so is the camaraderie. It's, oh gosh, it's so much fun. So people seem to love it. It's working. We have giveaways. I just brought back a bunch of little things from Paris. A Chanel camellia, handmade at Le Giron, some piece of Le Coif fabric. So we have giveaways, and we're about to give away a free class and a day with me.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun. And I honestly, let's face it, I mean, my girlfriends don't sew. I love them, but they don't sew. Mm-hmm. So my sewing friends are a very special group. And so we're sewing friends with each other. So yeah, so it's been great fun. It really has. And I'm telling you, I've learned all sorts of things and videos and books and where to get this, where do I get that? So it's been a lot of fun.
It's a resource as well as a friendship group.
That's exactly what it is. It's both of those things. And I do think in its own way, I mean, here we are in video, right? And we're connecting. This is great. And, there we are on Facebook connecting, and we've created a network with it. So I'm very happy about that. We've just kind of passed our first anniversary. So far, so good.
Can people join the sewing club at any time, or does it have to be now? Now?
Yeah, no. Okay. Anytime. And it's a monthly subscription. And I think it's great. And, if you have any sewing question, whatever, I'll answer. I'll weigh in. Had a girl today, she was working on a strapless dress she's doing. So I was kind of weighing in on a few thoughts about fitting her bodice and, adding a fisheye dart and darts on the side. So, and we get into some fitting things, and I probably see things that other people might not notice right off the bat. So,
and you do that really well.
Well, kind of my thing. Yeah. But I said, for instance, I think that princess seam looks like it's not quite in the fullest part of the bust, so let's shift that. And I'm seeing a little drag line there, and let's do this. So, and let's get a waist stain there. So we get into some technical stuff too, which, me, that's what I love.
That's your thing. That's what we love about you too.
Well, that's kind of my thing. So that's a big part of it too. So it's great fun.
Where are you doing your classes and the dates? Are you coming to Melbourne?
Yep. And it's all on the website. January, I'm doing classes in Melbourne. Right. And there are a couple of couture classes. There's a jacket class, and there's that smaller separates class, which is kind of, I think, a great introduction to the whole couture process. So that's January in Melbourne, February in Sydney. And same kind of things. And then the first 2 weeks in March, I'll be in Adelaide.
Wow. And do you have any spaces left?
I do.
Any spaces?
I do. Actually, there are a lot of spaces left. So, yeah. So come on down.
Check that out. And I think I noticed I'm a member of the ASG, and I think Maria is as well, Australian Sewing Guild.
Yep.
And I saw that there was a special little note down the end of the information.
5% discount for ASG members, which is great. And, we did this before, and I think people kind of joined the ASG because it was worth it. I'm happy to do that. I think the ASG is fabulous. So that was a win-win. And good locations. I'm going to be in Melbourne in Tatiana Anderson's studio. And which is fabulous.
Yes.
And she's the best. And in Sydney, it's marvelous. We're going to be at the Wesley Centre, which is right in the CBD. It's right on Pitt Street. Couldn't be a better location. Yeah. And Adelaide is right downtown too. Good venues. Good venues for that.
Yeah, and the Wesley one was really good because we had the classroom, and then if we needed a cutout, we went outside in the carpeted area and just went for it. Yes. They were so good to us.
I know. Wasn't that nice? Yeah.
It was wonderful.
So, and I have to say, I think, I teach in all sorts of different venues, and sometimes they're luxurious, and sometimes we kind of have to make do. And it's kind of a tribute, I think, to the mindset of sewers. They always cooperate. They always make it work. somebody said, no, I'll cut out when she's done. No, I'm fine over here.
That's right.
So seriously, it doesn't these are lovely locations, trust me, but we don't need the Taj Mahal
No.
to make this work. I think, look, you've got me, we'll make it work.
That is so exciting.
And then if people have different products that you've never seen before, it's like, oh, where did you get that from? So everyone gets out their phone and starts going onto the website and getting it. Like Wendy had that ham, that really huge ham.
Oh, my God, remember that thing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and, we had, who was it, Rona Feeney, who has the Chatswood bringing, and I don't know if she's going to be bringing any supplies this year, but she's registered for class. I hope she does. That was helpful.
Yeah, it was.
And I will be bringing, I did find the silk organza was perhaps able to be improved upon. We'll say that. It's difficult to find good silk organza.
It is.
In Australia. So I might try to tuck some of that in my suitcase. And I'll probably be, I was just in Normandy the other day. I took a little time away before my Paris trip, and I bought a lot of vintage Chanel trims. I bought oh my God, I bought like 65. I just really bought them.
And we don't have access to that here either.
Well, we don't have access to it here in the United States. Okay. So I'm going to try to cram as many of those into my suitcase as I can, because, and that is a challenge, I know, in Australia, the whole fabric thing. But it's hard, even in this country, to find the trims for the classic French jacket. It's hard. It really is. So I'm in good shape with those. And in fact, they were being shipped back from Paris, and I wrote to the gal today and said, I hope they're coming soon. So I'm dying to see them myself.
Oh, yeah.
Our listeners are from Australia, of course, but also branching out all over. And I hear you're going off to London to do a course. So tell us about that. When is that happening?
That's happening in April. I'd always done my Paris thing. I do Paris every year. And of course, Paris, it's just, it's us. It's near and dear to our hearts. And I don't think there's any place really that resonates, probably in the world of couture sewing, in the whole sense of, there's a wonderful French word, patrimoine, patrimony, this heritage, this generation after generation of doing things. And that's such a big part of Paris. So that's kind of its own special universe. And then people started saying, oh gosh, you should do a trip to London. But I take these things very seriously, and it's not something I dive into unless I think this is, again, my theory, it's got to be worth your time, your money, my time. I'm not going to do it if I don't feel it's fabulous. And I did live in London a long time back in the day. So there's that. And I started putting together a London trip, and I thought, this is fantastic. London does not have to take a back seat to Paris. So what do? We spend a day at the Royal School of Needlework doing a special thing. And I don't know if you've heard about this Bacton altar cloth. It's kind of in the news. They founded some church out in the country, an altar cloth that they think had been a dress from Elizabeth I.
Oh, wow.
So, it's kind of incredible. You should look it up. The Bacton altar cloth. So the Royal School of Needlework are restoring it. So they've done a design for us to do based on one of the patterns in the Bacton altar cloth. So spend a day at the Royal School of Needlework. We go up to Linton Tweeds.
Yes.
And since I now have a lovely relationship with them, we get the grand tour. Honestly, nobody else gets this, and it's very nice. Wow. We get to go into the factory. We look at the archives. It's the first
archives.
Time.
Wow.
Yeah. It's amazing. The first time we were there, I was sort of astonished when Carol Walker, she's my spirit animal. This woman is in her 80s. She just said, let's go. And off we went into the factory. She did the tour in stilettos. Seriously. She's fabulous. No, good honors. Right. She's amazing. So we get the royal welcome at Linton, spend a session with John Moore, who was design director of Hardy Amy's, with Alison Smith, who a lot of people know from Craftsy, go to the V&A. We're going to the Fashion Museum in Bath, visiting a gallery that specializes in fashion illustrations.
Yes.
Going to the ballet. Visit a designer. And we also go to Savile Row. And in fact, and we go into the workrooms. I mean, we're down there in the workrooms. And when we were there last year, they we could take photographs everywhere, but they said downstairs, just if you could not take photographs. And we realized later they were working on Harry's jacket.
Oh,
wedding.
There you go.
We kind of put two and two together because we knew they made his clothes and we knew the wedding was coming up and their best tailor was working on this special project. So we have a fabulous reception there at Savile Row. And, there's high tea and, I mentioned ballet. Oh, and we visit, of course, this wonderful McQueen exhibit. We tour Spitalfields. Oh, but it's really lovely. You're brought from the airport, a private car, it's a gorgeous hotel, your single room. It's very nice.
Sounds very nice. What do you think, Maria?
That's very nice. Jeez, I was staying in a one-bedroom place, jumping around different.
No, it's years ago when I started doing these tours, I mean, I thought this is not the way we traveled when we were 18. It's a little different now. And my goal is to make you not have to worry about anything.
That sounds like
effortless.
A great plan, and it sounds like it would be unforgettable. Every moment would be unforgettable.
Every day would be special.
Well, again, I'm taking your time, which to me is the most precious thing of all. And if I don't honor that, that's terrible. What right do I have to waste your time? Seriously.
Wow.
I don't want to sound nutty here, but it's true. I don't have that right. So I take my responsibilities very seriously. I mean, it's for a lovely end, but, no, I do.
It sounds like anyone who was thinking about going to London with you would be in very good hands.
Well, I have a fabulous assistant, and it's not. In fact, when we go to Linton, it's kind of a 3-hour train ride, and I know when I told people this, I could see they were thinking, oh God, 3 hours, okay. But it's first class on the train. You're served breakfast. Oh, would you like smoked salmon, madam? Or would you like eggs Benedict? I mean, they were almost sorry by the time we got there. And then on the way back, you have dinner. So it's pretty nice. Yeah.
I think we'd call it civilized, wouldn't we?
Very civilized.
I try to make it civilized. Yeah. Yeah, but it's great fun. It's marvelous. So. Yeah.
So would you call Australia your second home now? Would you?
Oh, I love it. And I would call it my second home. And I'll tell you, because people always say, well, what are they like over there? And I said, they're just like you think they are. They're enthusiastic and I think that's something they share with Americans. They kind of dive in and they're just gung-ho and enthusiastic about things. And I love that. I do. It's been so wonderful. And I guess I didn't quite foresee. I mean, you don't know until you do it. But I now feel I have friends there, right? I have, Maria, all kinds of lovely friends. And that's the best part. It's lovely. And I think of Australia and I think, I've spent quite a bit of time there by now, about 5 months. And that's significant. And it's fabulous to feel that you get a little bit of a sense of these places. And, the people are the best. It's great. Love it. Yeah. No, what's not to like? Look, it's great.
All I know from a student's point of view, when you've been here and I've come to one of your classes, that time is really important to me as a student because I know I can't get that learning from you and from the people in the group anywhere else.
Yeah, well, there are not so many people who teach on this level. And, I get asked sometimes in this country, people will say, oh, gosh, I live in, I don't know, Dubuque, Iowa. Is there anybody locally I can study with? And I always say, well, gee, I wish there were. And I always think, well, I wish I could send you to 20 other people who could teach you this. But it's just for whatever reason, and it's
you're
not
right.
really the case.
You can only self-teach yourself to a certain level.
It's true.
And you do need to go to some sort of training at some point when you're ready for it. And I never realised that, going to a class you're actually saying, oh, I'm deficient in something.
Oh.
Not deficient.
No, but from my perspective, I now understand why when I get to a class, for the first half of the day, I'm just frazzled because I'm sitting there going, just absolutely.
Well, yeah, and it's a lot that I pile on, but I always think, look, I've got you for 6 days, or I've got you for 7 days, or maybe doing 2 classes, but I've got you for such a limited period of time. Yeah. Sadly, I do have to kind of cram it in. And that's just the nature of it. And I know that I always say to people after the first day, I know your head is spinning. I know that because I've just thrown all this stuff at you. But stay with me. It's all going to gel. It's all going to make sense. Just trust me on this. Yeah, and it does work. But yeah, it's an intense, nicely intense, I like to think, situation. Yeah, intense in the best possible way.
I think when you talk about the classes and you talk about the people, I see there's a real fulfillment for you, that it's definitely a two-way street where you walk away and you feel like you've touched someone's heart, you've connected with them, and you've shared your knowledge and also opened up their mind on how they can apply it to so many other different things that they're making. And that is really the start of a new adventure in sewing.
Well, thank you. And I think that it's so easy to kind of, do what you're doing. You're kind of stuck and you think that's okay. But it's very exciting when you can open a door for someone. And I mean, certainly in the area of fitting, and that's the elephant in the room. That's the one thing that, let's face it, you really can't do yourself. You can't. I wish we could, but that's a big, tricky area. And I know I can help with that, so that's a big, important part of it. And, we always spend the first day doing fittings, right? Because I have students prepare a toile ahead of time, partly to save us some time, really, and also to commit somebody to a project. Because otherwise, if you just walk in and you don't know what you're going to do, well, Betty's doing this. Oh, I'll do that. Oh, no, maybe I'll do what she's doing. Or, she's doing, it just it's too much of a free-for-all. So by making you kind of make a toile ahead of time, then at least you're focusing on this project. So we spend the first day fitting, and I think it's pretty interesting for people. I say it's kind of like watching paint dry. I mean, most of the time you're kind of sitting there. Well, it is. I mean, I'm doing it, so it's not a whole lot of input from you. But that to me is wonderful to start off by showing people some very real ways to get them to look at the whole fitting process differently, because everybody has their own take on it. So to me, that's a strong way always that we start. And I feel that, who doesn't like to walk out with a fitted garment? I mean, just a fitted toile. I mean, it's great. And that's something that I love being able to do, so that's what I do for you then when we start. And then you kind of take over. But yeah, that's it. That's the whole fitting thing.
From a learner's perspective, when you're going through and you're fitting every single different person in that first day, you get to see from a participant point of view all the various areas. So it's actually a full day of learning. Even if you're just sitting there waiting for your turn, you can watch the whole time. And it's amazing.
Yeah. And people do. And, everybody has their own take on fitting, and I do. And I think it's tremendously educational because, I get the whole gamut. And people are very good about letting me use them as an example. Here's a great example of a high hip, and look at these shoulders, slightly different. Head's not quite in the middle.
But we can fit around that.
but it's great because I have all these built-in examples of who to use. So that I think is a strong start and an essential component. I mean, you can make the most beautiful dress in the world, but if it doesn't fit, what's the point of that? Right?
I noticed you have some patterns on your website as well, Susan. And
we do.
Tell me about the double darts, the double darts.
Oh, yeah, that's a pretty blouse. We work with a wonderful pattern maker in Paris, a fellow named Julian Christofoli, who I think is the best pattern maker in the world, hands down. And he's beautifully educated, and he's taught all over the world for a lot of the couture schools in Paris. He's freelance work for a lot of the couture houses. He was Asadine Alaya's assistant for 5 years. And he has an extraordinary aesthetic sense. And this is a blouse pattern we had him do. It's a boat neck, although you could modify that if you wanted. But it's got 2 French darts, which is really lovely. And, when you're fitting a bodice, very often those side, the diagonal darts that go down from the bust kind of down towards the waist. And they kind of form themselves. And what's nice about those darts is that you're sort of on the bias. You're on some kind of an off grain. Yes. So you're able to get a lovely contour there. And it makes so much sense to have 2 because let's say, for instance, you're fuller in the bust. Well, trying to get all of that shaping into a single dart, tricky. It leaves you with such an angle that it's very hard to go into a soft point. It just is. I mean, that's just the physics of it. So if you can split that into 2 darts, then you get a lovely, lovely result. And even if you're not particularly busty, it's still a very graceful, gentle way to go. So it's a very pretty blouse, and it can also easily be lengthened into a dress. Yeah, so it's really lovely. It's very, very pretty. Very, very graceful, I think. So that's one of our patterns. And of course, we have our classic French jacket, aka Chanel jacket. And much is made always with the 3-piece sleeve, and that was a couple of reasons for that. Of course, having a seam up into the shoulder allows you to shape the top of that sleeve so you get rid of a lot of the extra fullness, which otherwise would have to be kind of somehow forced into that sleeve cap. Who wants gathers, who wants darts? Well, if you have a seam up there, that's a beautiful way to shape that whole area. But it's so clever because if you extend that down, towards the hand, it gives a much better placement of the trims and buttons. Because if you didn't have that seam, you'd have a seam back here, right? Where traditionally you have buttons on a tailored jacket, for instance. Yes. Well, you don't see it. And one of the things we want to see in this classic French jacket, we want to see those trims and buttons. So it's a much better placement to put them at the base of that seam. So, and it's the most beautifully shaped sleeve. This is Julian again. And it just has an exquisite contour to it. It's the most beautiful sleeve ever. So that's a big part of it. And then we've just come out with what we call the Parisian jacket, which is it's lovely. It's got cut on sleeves, little notch collars, side panel. It's just adorable. And, we also had Julian do a straight skirt. And you might think, oh, big deal. What's so exciting about a straight skirt? Well, done by the best pattern maker in the world. It's beautiful. One thing the French always do, this is interesting. So you would think a skirt, you'd have a side seam kind of right, between the front and the back. The French always offset that side seam so that it's a centimeter back so that when you look at the person, you don't see the seam. Right? It's set back. And another advantage of it, so if you think of where you're getting into the curves, right, your hip curves, it's further back. It's beyond that halfway point. So there's a little bit of ease built into that seam, and that helps with the shaping.
Wow.
So, and it's pegged. So there, all these little subtleties. This is the French again, but these are the things that make a pattern special.
Wow. Glad I brought that question up. I'm excited about those patterns.
Well, no, you don't, you think, all right, what, straight skirt, big deal. There are a billion of them out there. Well,
no, that's actually a really good one that I use quite a lot, especially when it comes to placement of print and making sure that it's sitting right.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's beautifully done little pattern. And we've got Julian working on a bunch more things. So yes, we're going to keep him very busy. Actually, what is he doing now? We just finished this funnel neck coat. Oh, a cape. going to be working on a cape. Yeah, I actually took a vintage cape with me to Paris that we're modifying. A gathered neck blouse. I don't know, got some other stuff in the pipe. A couple of vintage coats. So, and other things. Yeah, other things in the pipeline.
Good things to look forward to.
Yeah.
Now I have to get myself into one of the courses. I haven't been able to make a decision yet, but I will.
Well, there is room, and
yep. And I've got some Linton tweed in my stash. So I'm sitting there thinking, I need to be, because I bought it years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, go Linton. Yeah.
I know. When you said that you're collaborating with the...
Well, it's funny because...
It makes sense.
I visit, and it was their idea. I visit them, and, and I've gotten to know Carol Walker, who's the managing director, this lovely, lovely woman. And I have to pass on one of the things that she said. As women in business, we're so often kind of shy and hat in hand and don't like to talk about money and all these things. And so she always gives us a lecture. A talk while we're having lunch. And she talked about the fact that they have to have different products and different colors for different markets. Right. Obviously the Middle Eastern market likes different things than the Japanese markets. Mm-hmm. And I remember she held up, and she was passing around all these different samples, some of which were more to our taste than others. And she said, but you know what? If we don't sell, we don't eat. And it was so upfront and so stark. And I thought, wow, she means it. This is true. She's a businesswoman. And it was not just, we're making lovely fabrics. No, if we don't sell them, we don't eat. I loved it. It was so forceful in the best possible way. It was such a strong statement. I admired it so much. So, so they approach it. So obviously, I've gotten to know her, having been there a couple of times. And we just kind of heard from them out of the blue about wanting to do a collaboration, and really excited. And what I hadn't realized, and it makes sense, they get asked all kinds of questions. How much should I buy? How do I match a plaid? How do I do this? What's a good pattern? So it was good thinking on their part, I think, to maybe bring in someone who can help a little bit. So
that's
very
great.
Excited.
No, it makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Kind of makes perfect sense. So we're just kind of getting started with this. Yeah, it's fun.
It's a great relationship. It's a win-win for both of you.
I think it will be. So that's I was thrilled. I was absolutely thrilled.
And good for us too.
Tweeds.
Yeah, it's good for us as learners.
Yeah, right.
Great.
Yeah. So we'll see what we can do for them.
Very exciting.
Yeah,
it's nice.
It is.
There's always new adventures in store when you're a sewing person. You meet more people, learn things, and gosh.
Isn't it true? I know. And I love just not knowing what's around the corner, and I'm always fascinated by the next challenge. And of course I'm involved with Threads magazine. So, we're always thinking of working on an article at the moment about gathers, having perfect gathers. And, one of the jobs as a contributing editor is to kind of propose articles. And there's a fabulous Dior book that came out by Alexandra Palmer. I don't know if you know this one, but if you don't, run out now and get it. She's no, I'm serious. Yeah. She's the curator, the head of the collection at the Toronto Museum. And they've done a Dior book based on the Dior gowns that they had, which were mostly given to them by the wealthy women in Toronto. Okay. And these are gowns from the best, the 50s. And the patterns are shown, the insides. It's unbelievable what she's done. And I'm hoping that we can do something with Threads that would look inside those bodices. Who wouldn't want to see, the boning and the inner structure and all of this. So, boy, would I love to get my paws on some of those. Yeah, but in the meantime, there's the book, which is amazing. Yes.
When I went to the Dior exhibit at the V&A, I took photos, and they weren't straight on, but I was trying to get detail, so pocket detail and collar detail, and the whole.
I know
that would be great.
Yeah, well, it's a fantastic book, Alexandra Palmer's Dior book. It's the best out there because I think that. And it's interesting, there's so many Dior books and so many, and they're kind of picture books. right?
Yes.
And I think if you looked at this one, you'd think, oh, it's wonderful, but you think, oh, this is just going to be another book of Dior gowns. Okay. But it's not. There are patterns in there and close-ups. It's phenomenal. It's an education. It really is. It's amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to ask Santa for that book, I think.
You do that.
Yeah.
Seriously. Yes.
So,
Well, I can't thank you enough. Dying to see you, which I will do soon.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that, to having you
Me too.
back in Australia again.
Yeah.
Dying to be back. Yeah. And looking forward to meeting you when I'm there.
Yeah, that would be just so wonderful.
I would love that.
I'm very thankful for Jude with
she's the best.
She's gorgeous.
She's a fabulous person. Yes.
Yeah. So very thrilled to know her. Such a cheer squad, such an enthusiast and also hands-on. I just love her whole attitude to anything sewing. So I'm very thrilled to be part of her circle. But we are so thankful that you spent your time with us today.
Oh, this was too much fun. It was great. It was great.
Thank you.
All right. I can't thank you enough.
Hearing Susan's couture sewing teaching story is infectious and compelling. Her approach to teaching couture sewing makes you want to take that next step and elevate your sewing skills. The passion and kindness in Susan's voice here in this podcast is the same as you'll experience in her workshops. Couture sewing keeps you in the game. This episode of Sew Organised Style was produced by me, Maria Theoharis, and Anne Wally. Thank you so much, Susan, for your time, and we're looking forward to meeting you again in January and February. Sew Organised Style podcast, spelt with an S, not a Z, is available on our website seworganisedstyle.com with all the links to this podcast. You can also find our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio and Castbox. Subscribe to our podcast to listen to earlier podcasts and tell your friends about us. Thanks again for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this podcast as much as we did producing it.